Welcome back to Authors and Innovators 2025. We are very, very excited for all of our authors. And our theme this year, of course, is the resilient entrepreneur. I can't think of a better book than Meaningful Work by Tamara Miles and Wes Adams. Tamara, welcome. I am so pleased you're here. Tamara is a professor at BC, where she teaches in the Master of Science and Leadership program. She also teaches positive psychology at UPenn. She's been around this work for a long time. Tamara, thank you for being with us. I am very excited to talk about meaningful work. Our theme makes this book perfect, in part because the big question, and you've always said this throughout your work, and particularly in this work, every job can be meaningful. Really?
Yes. There is a huge misconception, and that's a great place to start. And thank you so much for having me. One of the biggest misconceptions about meaningful work is that it's reserved for certain professions or sectors like, healthcare or, maybe teaching or, social justice. And what we find is that meaningful work is not as much about what you do, but about how you experience what you do. And in our research, we interviewed people that work as janitors, as hairdressers, and across tech industries and across 25 industries. And they all experience work as meaningful. And so, tying it to resilience, when we experience our work as meaningful, we spend a third of our lives, more time at work than anywhere else in our lives. When we have a meaningful experience, right, which comes from three main sources, which are community, contribution, and challenge.
Your three C's,
yes.
Which are terrific. We don't want to give away too much because I want to make sure people get this terrific book. But
but it just it really boosts our resilience because these are all protective factors that are shown to increase our ability to navigate uncertainty and adversity, right? Which is resilience.
You talk a bit about leaders putting on their oxygen mask first. We talk about the emergency procedures in an airplane. Speak to that, Tamara, because that really jumped out at me as I was reading this. And for our audience of CEOs, leaders, entrepreneurs, that's a really important concept.
Yeah. One of the questions we get asked a lot is, how can I make work more meaningful for others? Because that's the premise of the book. We studied how leaders can create environments that foster meaning at work. And so all the practices, all the stories, are about making work more meaningful for others. And so we get the question, like, how can I do that if I'm not experiencing my own work as meaningful? Like, do I need to find meaning in my own work first? And the question is no. There are decades of research that show that the best way to increase your own well-being is to make other people happier, right? So random acts of kindness, gratitude expressions, and things like that boost other people's well-being while also boosting our own well-being. And what we find is that making work meaningful is the same. The more you invest in making work more meaningful for others, the more you yourself start experiencing work as meaningful.
I want to take the readers on a little bit of a trip, an edited trip through the three C's. So contribution. Speak to that if I'm a CEO at either a large company or I'm a CEO at a very small company. Talk a bit of a frame contribution for me.
Yeah, contribution is really about understanding how we make a difference. How is it that what I do every day really matters? Does it matter? Right. And how does it matter? And, there's a lot of conflation between meaningful work and purpose, right? We use them interchangeably. And what we find is that they are different. Purpose is a part of meaningful work, and purpose lives in that contribution C. So purpose often drives us to join an organization, right? I really believe in what this organization is doing, their purpose, their mission, and it's great to attract the right talent. But once you get there, it's just not enough to make work meaningful. Having a purpose isn't enough. You need to activate that sense of purpose. And you do that by contribution, by showing people the contribution that they're making, by noticing what they're doing, highlighting what they're doing. The most powerful, simplest practice in contribution is positive feedback. Like one
And
thing.
so easy, right? You just got
So
to be
easy.
mindful. Yeah.
Yeah, one thank you once a week from a manager is enough to cut burnout and disengagement in half. One thank you once a week. It's really simple, but we don't do it enough.
Talk a bit about the second C, connection. And I loved your example. You talked about Oprah doing all of these interviews, and whether it's Oprah or somebody else finishing this interview and saying, was that okay?
Right.
Talk about that in the context of connection, because I found that so evocative.
Yeah. So connection falls under the C that we call community, right? It's this feeling of belonging, of being able to show up authentically, be yourself at work, and then also express what you really think, what you're really thinking. Where contribution says what I do matters here, community says I matter here. And so Oprah, it was a speech she did, a commencement speech at Harvard. And she said in the 30 years at that point that she had been doing interviews with, people who had been convicted of crimes and all the way up to Beyonce, when the microphone shuts off, everybody turns to her and says, was that okay? Did you see me?
Right.
Did you hear me? Did what I say matter? And so we equate that to the stories we heard at work. People show up every day wanting to know, did you see me? Did what I say matter? It was that okay? And what we found is that the most powerful question in our research that predicted a strong sense of community at work was, does your leader care about what's happening in your life outside of work? Does your leader care, not know? So it's one thing for the leader to know that
Right.
you're going to your kid's soccer game over the weekend. It's another thing for in that Monday, that person to say, hey, how was the soccer game? How'd your kid do? The weather was so nice, to just remember and follow up. And it doesn't have to be about like deep personal issues. It's just like the day-to-day things that are happening in people's lives. Knowing, caring, asking follow-up questions, making people feel seen and like they matter.
Great prompts. And I want to talk about sort of the third C, the idea of challenge, because that struck me as the as probably among the most important things that someone can do, not just to attract, but to retain folks.
Absolutely. Challenge is we all need somebody who believes in us, right? We all need someone who believes in us. And so challenge is about that. It's about seeing potential in people, believing in them, and then offering opportunities for growth and development. And that's so important, like you said. Most people, in a study by McKinsey, had said that in the previous 3 months, no one had talked to them about their growth and development. And that's why people leave. And especially we find that for Gen Z, which are early career stage people that happen to be Gen Z now. So this is more about career stages than generations. But people that are starting up really are craving this idea of growth and development, investing in potential, pathways for growth and learning, mentorship. So those are really important. And we know from research on meaning in life and meaning in general that meaning often lives on the other side of struggle. When we do something hard at work, we heard so many inspiring stories of people who said, oh my gosh, this person gave me this assignment and I wasn't sure I could do it. I was so nervous, but they believed in me, so I wanted to do it. And I pulled together a team and I got the right resources, and it was really hard. But wow, that really stands out as a pivotal moment in my career. Stories like that were so inspiring.
And they stuck out because your leaders said, I noticed that. I saw that. Tamara, speak to that CEO who might have a remote team, fully remote team, and say, this is all great, but it's too hard to do. It's too hard to do virtually. And you give some great tips in each case and in each chapter for each of the C's. But I wanted to give our listeners a snapshot of why they should read this. So how do you respond to that CEO who says, Tamara, it's just too hard to do virtually?
I mean, I would say, yeah, it is harder. You're right. First of all, acknowledging the fact that things have changed. It is harder. What works in person doesn't always work, in a hybrid or remote environment. And so it just takes, but it's not impossible. These practices are simple, right? They're pretty common sense. They're not common practice. And then I think this hybrid environment just adds another layer of intentionality. And so we risk with the hybrid world being so transactional because we jump in on Zoom. Sometimes we don't have our cameras on and we go right into the work. And it's about like taking that step back and building some community. One of the practices that we share in the book is a practice that Dr. Vivek Murthy, who was the U.S. Surgeon General, he shared with us when we were graduate students at UPenn, and he said it's something he does in his own team, and it's something you can do in person or virtually. It's what he calls inside scoop. So he was noticing that people were just like jumping into work, being super transactional, but there's a loneliness crisis. Everybody shows up, they do the work, but they don't feel connected to the people they work with, and they don't have a friend at work or somebody to navigate the challenges or to ask for help or just to share positive events that happen. And so he started dedicating the first 5 minutes of his weekly team meeting to having one person share a picture or, a meaningful object and tell the story of that thing. And what happens, Larry, let's say it was my turn and I share a picture of, my garden. And I talk about how, this summer, these flowers bloomed and whatever it is. And I show the pictures and I'm so proud of my gardens. And maybe you are a gardener too. And we didn't even know that about each other. And all of a sudden we have something else in common and we can talk about that. And he said that really transformed his team and it became the most important part of their weekly meetings.
I want to go back to resilience, and you make this point, you and Wes make this point in a number of places. It really is about renewing and reflecting, particularly these days when people are spending their days doom scrolling. In addition to reading this, who else do you want to read this? Is it just for that CEO? Is it for teammates? Who did you and Wes write this for?
So we are really clear in the book right away in the beginning that when we talk about leadership, we really mean influence. So you don't necessarily have to be a people leader to enact these practices. You can be a colleague. You can do that to your supervisor. You just have to care. You just have to want to experience more meaning at work and then try to influence overall the experience of meaningful work. And so we wrote this for the person who knows that meaningful work matters and is important and wants more meaning in their day-to-day experience of work.
I found it it's a terrific, refreshing read, and it's one of those things, my own plug for CEOs, it's one of those books where you will finish a chapter and say, that makes good sense. And that's so easy. Yeah. Tamara, where can people learn more about this? You have a great bibliography at the end. As I said, it's engaging, it's readable. Where can a leader learn more about this, particularly the unique field of positive psychology and starting there?
Yeah, so the whole book is based on the science of positive psychology. That's the lens we bring in. That's the research that we do. So we have a book website. It's makeworkmeaningful.com. On that website, we have a free assessment that's also in the book that you can take to see where do you currently stand in the 3 C's? Where should you start and focus on first? And we also have a ton of free resources, worksheets and models that are downloadable and free that you can start implementing right away. We try to make this really accessible because, we believe that the biggest lever for increasing well-being at scale is to make work more meaningful. what we experience at work, we bring home with us. And that experience impacts our relationships with our families, with our communities. And if we bring home with us an experience that was meaningful, that really impacts our well-being up to 3 degrees of separation. So it's a really powerful way to increase well-being, especially now we're navigating so much uncertainty, so much change, so fast. The past 5 years, the world of work changed
Right.
so fast and it's continuing to change. And these practices can really anchor us, and help our resilience.
It's why I thought this was just perfect for our theme this year. Resilience means being in community. And you and Wes have got a how-to guide of how to connect people, how to be in community, how to remember how to do that. And so I see a lot of great books behind you. What are you reading these days?
So I'm just finishing up a book called Happy Brain, Happy Life. It's by a neuroscientist, Wendy Suzuki, who's at NYU. She's actually the dean of the College of Arts and Sciences now. And I met her when I was dropping my son off, and she was a powerhouse. And so I am loving her book. It's like part memoir, but layered with all the science behind it.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah.
Well, that's just terrific. Tamara Miles, thank you so much. The book is Meaningful Work. Thank you again, big authors and innovators. Thank you for joining us. I hope everyone can get this book.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.